during the presentation, we like everybody to please be on mute. If you have a question, I'm going to be monitoring the chat session, and I'll record your question, and I'll at the opportune time I'll make sure all those questions are answered. Is that right, Art?
Sounds
One more
good.
thing,
Thank you,
Rich.
Rich.
One more thing. If you
Yes,
could, if each of you would just right-click next to your name, as you can see your name on your screen, and it'll give you the opportunity to rename yourself. And we need a full name, and then the club you're from, if you could. And that's how it works on a PC. I'm not sure. I see a couple of iPads in here. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it works on an iPad.
Hey, Art, it's a left click on a Mac.
It's a left click on a Mac.
Just click on your name.
Click on your name, iPad, and left click. And actually, right click on a PC next to your name. It'll say rename. And just type in your name and your Rotary Club, if you would. And don't put RC, Rotary Club, just your club. Pastor Jay, I just got a glimpse of you. You are looking pretty sharp today, girl. So.
Yeah. All righty. And the reason that's important, it's especially important for the upcoming session after this one on district grants, because we do absolutely track attendance for all of those who are applying for district grants. So thank you for doing that. District Governor Larry Claiborne is not hearing anything. Not sure. Is Carolyn on the call, or Rich? Maybe you can reach out to Larry and help him while I get started.
I will. I'll try to do that.
Okay. Awesome. For those who may not know, I will be taking over as our Rotary District Foundation Chair coming in July. I've got big shoes to fill, I know. Art's very happy about that. And he's not going far, though. So he's going to help us out on the global grant side, and he will also be chairing the Audit and Stewardship Committee. So he is still around, and he is a great resource for us. So I think most of you know me. My name is Jeanette Loftus. I am the immediate past district governor of this fabulous, great district. And this session is going to focus on the Rotary Foundation Basics 101. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to go through this. I'm going to periodically open it up for questions. So if you do have any questions as we're going through, put those in the chat box, and then I'll count on DG and Rich Cooper to ask those for you so I can make sure we get those answered. Okay, let's get started. Okay. Wait a minute. Got it. All righty. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, good, good, good. All righty. So I want you to pay close attention as we're going through this. This year's theme is Rotary Opens Opportunities, and you'll see that throughout the presentation. And I want you to think about how the resources that we're going to talk about today and how you can use those in your clubs and your communities locally, and maybe if you're working on a project. So I want you to consider those things. So the Rotary, can you see that black stripe across the middle or no?
We cannot.
No? Okay, good, okay. The Rotary Foundation, we love acronyms, right? So we will refer to the Rotary Foundation probably quite a bit throughout this slide as TRF, the Rotary Foundation. And this is their mission statement: to enable Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, hold on, I gotta move this over, and peace through the improvement of health, the support of education, and the alleviation of poverty. I mean, and I'm sure all of you, I know your clubs are doing fabulous projects in your community, and I think that you will find this statement resonates with a lot of what we're already doing in our clubs. So let's talk about some particulars of the Rotary Foundation. It is a $100 million a year business. It is a 501c3, and it's independent of Rotary International. And I'm not sure everybody really probably understands that, but they are two separate entities. Rotary International manages, our membership side of it, and the Rotary Foundation is the giving side of our organization. It is has received 100-score rating from 4-star Charity Navigator. We have 4 stars with them. Only in a total of 3 organizations out of almost 9,000 have a perfect score. And the Rotary Foundation is absolutely one of them. So you should be very proud of that. And it's something to be proud of and talk about as you're going out to solicit, in your own communities. Any questions so far?
Yes, Jeanette. I've had a couple people ask, will we be able to get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, I can make that available.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the Rotary Foundation helps coordinate and fund viable humanitarian projects and educational opportunities. So what does that mean? Basically, it means we do good in the world, and doing good is the motto of the Rotary Foundation. And when I say the world, I'm not just talking the global world, I'm talking our individual communities. So again, use the resources that we're going to talk about today and tap into those resources to be a resource for your own community and your own clubs. Rotary has 6 areas of focus. Some of you may already know this. We're going to just go through them briefly because this is the foundation of the projects that we work on and the efforts and the humanitarian projects that we enjoy. The first being peace and conflict resolution. So obviously on a global scale, we can imagine how fabulous it would be to have a world of peace and free of any conflict, right? But how about on a community level? What does that look like in your own community? Some Rotary clubs are doing projects for anti-bullying campaigns in their local schools. That's an example of peace and conflict resolution. The next area of focus, disease prevention and treatment. And the first that comes to mind when I think about this is the eradication of polio, right? That's our #1 external priority, especially for the Rotary Foundation. But more locally, a lot of times our clubs are contributing to health clinics. I know Clay County sponsors a dental clinic up there. So it's really preventing disease and treating disease. Water and sanitation. As I was putting together this slide, I'm thinking, about hand washing. And typically, when I talk about the Rotary Foundation, I talk about hand washing stations. I'm thinking about hand washing stations in a remote village that may not have access to clean water and soap and things, right? But the Rotary Club of North Jacksonville actually just sponsored a project supplying hand wash stations to the homeless population in Jacksonville. I mean, something really resonating locally here when you look at that water and sanitation component, right? We're using that. How many times do we hear wash your hands, sing happy birthday or whatever? So definitely that's a hot topic right now. Maternal and child health, making sure that our expectant mothers are cared for, making sure that our children are fed, making sure that they have access to the immunizations and health care. So they grow up to be productive citizens of our world. Locally, I know a lot of you work on backpack projects, you send food home with the kids on the weekends, and you're really concentrating a lot in this area as well. Basic education and literacy. Globally, what does that look like? We've done a district grant for tablets in Ghana that we sent to Ghana, so the children in school there could just take their tablet, grades K through 12, download the current curriculum, gets updated automatically, it communicates with the satellite, a lot more durable than a book would be, and it lasts a lot longer. Locally, what are we doing? We're doing dictionary projects, Dolly Parton Imagination Library. A lot of you mentor children or become reading buddies to kids in schools. So that's what that looks like in your own communities. Economic and community development. That could be a microloan. We do a lot of microloans throughout the world to start up little small businesses for $200. We can start a business with a woman and a piggery, or giving a sewing machine so they can start a sewing machine business or a sewing business. Locally, the Rotary Club of Palatka Sunrise last year got a grant, a district grant, to resurface and help build pickleball courts, right? That's economic and community development. So it takes on a different look depending on the community in which we serve. So I'll pause for a second and open it up for any questions that you may have.
None in the chat so far, Jeanette.
That's good. It gave me a chance to wet my whistle and get a drink.
All right.
We're moving on. There's a lot of information to cover. I will be available after today. Let me have a chance to have my cocktail at 5 o'clock, and I know Art's available, and anybody on the District Foundation team would be glad to help. So we are moving on. So what are the programs of the Rotary Foundation? And we're going to go through these briefly, and then we're going to go into each one in a separate slide. So I'll move through these rather quickly. District grants, global grants, scholars, vocational training teams, polio eradication, and peace scholars. Okay, those are the programs of the Rotary Foundation. So let's talk about global grants. You heard Will Harlan, and I'm just going to gloss over this because we have a separate session on global grants coming up today at 4 o'clock with Art McQueen and John Caulfield from the Rotary Club of Jacksonville, who will be shadowing Art this year. We've actually added this as a position to the District Foundation team, and that's a global grants chair. So it's somebody dedicated to help our clubs and help you with the writing of those grants. So Art, thank you for being voluntold and agreeing to step into that position in the coming year. So we heard from Will Harlan, fabulous presentation if you were on that plenary session before we started here, talking about bringing seeds, water, and schools to the indigenous people in Mexico, the Tarahumara Indians. Amazing. That is a great example of a global grant. Art had also mentioned in that presentation that global grant supports a larger international project. We must have an international partner. We must have a club wherever we're doing this, or another Rotary Club. It also has to focus in one of those 6 areas of focus that we just reviewed. Must be sustainable. So after Rotary is gone, the project must continue. They must have means to continue that project, and must have measurable outcomes. So the minimum project for a global grant is $30,000. A global grant can also include a vocational training team, could be a Rotary Scholar, Global Scholar, or a combination thereof. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about those couple things in the next couple of slides. District grants. District grants, we are also having a district grant session coming up after this, immediately following at 3 o'clock. And that will be led by our district grant chair, Jonathan Fleiter of the Rotary Club of South Point, and his, I'll call him a sidekick, Tim O'Donnell, who will be our district grant chair next year, beginning in July 2021. He'll be shadowing with Jonathan this coming year. So a district grant is on a smaller scale, a much smaller scale. Typically our district grants, they vary anywhere from 2,000 or 3,000, it could be less, to 20,000, maybe a little bit more, but usually that's kind of historically has been around the maximum. It does still have to focus or concentrate on one of those 6 areas of focus. We require that. It's more short-term in nature. You apply for a district grant by April 30th typically is the deadline, although we are extending that this year to May 15th because of the current situation that we're in. You cannot start that, and Jonathan will go over all of this in his session, but you cannot start until you get permission. We get permission from the Rotary Foundation. That usually happens in August. So we say it needs to be shovel ready. You need to be able to rock and roll because it has to be completed and the final report submitted by April 1st of the following year. So it is much more short-term in nature. And I'll pause there for any questions.
Jeanette, we had a good question. You're familiar, I'm sure, with the Josh the Otter program, which Paul brought this one up. It's a literacy program, so it delves into literacy, but it's safety, child safety as well. What do you feel about that as far as areas of focus?
Actually, I'm going to ask Art, because didn't we have somebody that tried to do a Josh the Otter project in one of our clubs over the past couple of years, Art?
Yeah, Paul, Josh the Otter, the challenge with Josh the Otter is it's not sustainable. We can't seed it one year and make it work continually over a course of years. It's almost like the dictionary project. Great project for a club to do, but it's not eligible for a district grant because we give them the dictionaries. They're great for that third grader, but then you've got to do it again the following year. So unless there was some mechanism to fund it year after year, I don't know what kind of luck you would have with Josh the Otter. Josh the Otter, great program. A lot of clubs participate. It's swim safety. I would think area of focus, probably maternal and child health as much as anything.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Anything else? Is that another question?
No, that was it. Oh wait, I think.
Alrighty, we are moving along.
That was it.
Foundation programs that concentrate on educational opportunities, global grant
Oh, wait,
scholars.
let me grab something else.
We have the opportunity to fund graduate level academic studies for individuals who are pursuing a career in
Oh,
one
you're
of
taking
our
my keys if you need them.
areas of focus. Vocational training teams. Vocational training
Yes.
teams is a group of professionals that go abroad.
I don't have her seat in the car.
Jesse, I think your mic is on. Can you mute?
We're good.
Okay. Vocational training teams. We're learning, we're teaching professionals.
It's iPhone Shirley, whoever that is.
Yes.
Can everybody make sure your mics are muted? Alrighty, so we'll start that again. Vocational training teams can be part of a global grant, but doesn't have to be. It's a team of professionals that travel to another country, leading professionals that practice that same vocation. For example, it could be clean water and sanitation. We may send a team here to Uganda to help them work on water and sanitation efforts, or we can have them come and visit us as well. No particular age requirement, and you can have some Rotarians in that team, but no more than 3 members. So peace, Rotary Centers for International Studies, Peace and Conflict Resolution. Rotary has 7 universities that we participate with around the world. Some of them concentrate more on a graduate degree in peace and conflict resolution, particularly. Some of them are just a 12-month certificate program. And those are, great candidates for those could be, some of your local police officers or something like that somebody has a passion about peace and conflict resolution, maybe some teachers or something like that. So be on the lookout. Let me stop there and see if there are any questions. We're good? Okay, I'm moving along.
Yeah, Jeanette,
Yeah,
this is Deborah. I was wondering, I didn't catch everything that you said and which type of grant. Is that the peace and conflict resolution that had to do with maybe police officers and teachers?
yes. every year the Rotary Foundation awards 100, 115 Peace Scholars. It's a pretty stringent application process. They have to already have experience in that field of some degree. And I would tell them to go online to Rotary International, Rotary.org, and get some additional information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Matt, one more question that came through. For vocational training, when the trainees come to the U.S., any travel needs to be arranged through Rotary International. Is this correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. One other question that just came in is COVID-19 grants for local use. Will this be covered with more detail in district grant section? I would think.
We can. I don't know if we intended to. So
Well,
I
I
would
can-
say,
I can
Jonathan?
tailor some of it towards the end to that, Jeanette.
Okay, there you go. There's your answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, Polio Plus. Love our eradication efforts in polio. Jeff Michaelman gave a great presentation. Some of you may know this started just like all of these grants and that we do. It starts with the idea of one person. And polio eradication started with the idea of one Rotarian who visited the Philippines in 1979, and look at where we are today. Rotary began embracing this really back in the mid 1980s, back when there were 1,000 cases per day in over 125 countries. You heard Jeff say that we are down to just 42 cases year to date in 2 countries right now. That's Afghanistan and Pakistan. Our partners, we have great partners. Some of these are going to sound very familiar to you these days. The World Health Organization, haven't heard that name in a while. Centers for Disease Control. We also partner with UNICEF and a lot of different governments throughout the world. And one of our largest partners that I hope you're aware of is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And they have been very generous to Rotary, and they have offered to match our dollars, $2 for every one that we contribute. So your $10 becomes 30, your 100 becomes 300. I will ask you that if you have not yet made a contribution to this fabulous campaign, to please consider doing so. I actually wrote down something that was in that video. Be a character in our story, be a part of the solution. Love that. So I hope you all will be characters in that story. Questions on polio? All righty. Let's talk about money and how we get our money into the Rotary Foundation and how we can use that money as a resource to do good in our own communities and around the world. So how can we contribute to the Rotary Foundation? First of all, the obvious is cash, right? And I think a lot of us make contributions through our clubs, it comes in our statements, through our dues. But a lot of us also have been going online to myrotary.org and contributing through Rotary Direct. And it's a recurring gift. You just go in there, very simple, charge my credit card, X number of dollars per month, per quarter, boom, it's done. So that's another way to do it, a little easy. Some employers are willing to match your gifts to charity, so you could consider that if you work for one of those. IRA mandatory distributions. I love this one because some of our Rotarians are reaching the age where they have to start taking their mandatory distributions. So instead of actually taking that money and then making a donation to the Rotary Foundation, they can actually have that money transferred directly out of their IRA directly to the Rotary Foundation without having to pay taxes on it. Love that one. So consider using that. If anybody wants more information, I can point you, or Art can point you in the right direction. A couple other ones that you may or may not be familiar with that are very easy peasy. Rotary credit card. We have a Rotary credit card, and I did a little research. Since 2000, the Rotary Foundation has received $8.6 million based on charges that we all make on our credit card. especially going to the next one, Amazon, right? Did you know that you can designate a portion of your the proceeds from Amazon can go directly to the Rotary Foundation through Amazon Smiles? In addition, and I'll go through these quickly, investments, they're willing to take investments, real estate, life insurance, and bequest commitments if you leave Rotary Foundation in your estate planning. Questions?
We have one question, Jeanette. Actually, it's a comment, and I'm not sure, Beth, what you're referring to, but she asked, please make sure Jeanette mentions that the donation goes directly to the foundation and not the individual. Beth, are you able to clarify?
Yes, that is a fantastic way to donate. But you have to be very, very careful that the plan administrator, that you make it very clear to the plan administrator that it goes directly to the foundation. It cannot come to the individual. If it does, then it's taxable income. If it goes direct, it's fine. The second point on that is you cannot obviously double dip and take that as a contribution on your Schedule A if you're able to itemize, because you've already received the tax benefit of not having it as income. Thank you.
Anybody guess what Beth does for a living?
Financial.
Yeah, actually. Rich, any other questions?
That's all we had.
Oh,
Right.
Jeanette,
Yeah.
Jeanette, that is great about the Amazon Smiles. I didn't know that until just now. So I will make sure that when the Port Orange Club talks about, how we can contribute, because it's coming up like towards the end of the year, I will make sure I mention the Amazon Smiles.
Thank you, Cheryl. Awesome.
Yeah,
Every
that's
little bit
great.
helps, right?
Yeah, but that's like an easy pleasy one,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Very good. You're welcome.
Jeanette,
Okay, we are moving
Jeanette,
along.
this
So
is Paul.
once we send our money to the Rotary Foundation, where does our money go? And I'm going to make this simple, and then we're going to go into some more detail as we move forward. So there's 3 buckets that we're going to try to make it simple. First bucket is annual giving. Typically, that's where most of our donations will go. Second bucket is restricted giving. Polio would be an example of restricted giving. And the third bucket is the endowment fund. Okay, so we're going to move on and we'll talk about each of these individually. Annual giving. Most of us, when we make a contribution to the Rotary Foundation, this is where our dollars go. When we give to the Rotary Foundation, the money sits up at the Rotary Foundation for 3 years. Okay, all of the money we collect from our members, our clubs, the district collectively, that money sits up there for 3 years. The interest that is earning actually funds the operations of the Rotary Foundation. Everybody with me so far? Okay. After 3 years, 50% of that money goes to the World Fund. And the World Fund is what we use to fund our global grants, to fund our global scholars, vocational training teams. That's the World Fund. It's accessible to us through the World Fund. The other 50% comes back to the district as district designated funds. Okay, and that's an acronym that you've heard. It's called DDF. So let's give, and it's also called SHARE. Okay, so let's give a little bit more of a real world example. Let's say, for example, collectively the district gives $500,000. All of our Rotarians, all of our clubs gives $500,000 to the Rotary Foundation. In 3 years, $250,000 will go to the World Fund. Less the 5%. I'm sorry, I should note that there is a 5% that they put in reserves, just in case there's a downturn in the market. They want to be able to still fund the projects. The other 50%, or $250,000, comes back to the district in the form of DDF. Everybody with me so far? Good. Out of that $250,000, that 50% gets divided again. Up to 50%, and our district typically funds the maximum amount, up to 50% we can use for district grants. Okay, so that leaves 125,000 for district grants. That's accessible to each and every one of you and your clubs. You with me? Okay. The other 50% of that bucket, the other 125,000 is available for the district to manage through our share committee, that we can help fund those global grants. Art had said before, somebody asked the question about how much can we contribute and how much is matched. I don't want to get into the weeds, but we can use that to help fund any global grants that you may have. We can also designate part of that for polio or peace scholars or things like that. Out of the annual giving, all of those dollars earn you Paul Harris credit, and we'll go into that a little bit more later, and they all count towards your club's per capita giving, and we'll go into that a little bit later. Any questions on this slide? It's a lot of information. It can get confusing.
I've got a question here. I'm sorry. So there's a couple actually. The question is, how do we expect the current downturn in markets will impact future projects? I don't know if that's something we can address here or.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we have that operating reserves,
That
right?
5%, right?
That's why we have that 5%. And I
Okay.
can tell you that the Rotary Foundation trustees actually have created a disaster fund, and because of this COVID thing, we typically use that disaster fund up at the Rotary Foundation for hurricanes and storms, natural disasters, but they are utilizing that now for the COVID grants. They're making those available. Next question.
Yep. And the ways to contribute, this is from Paul, and the ways to contribute, I saw somewhere either the district or the RI website where there are Rotary discounts at various stores, and some of them give money back to the Rotary for every purchase. It's kind of back from the previous slide.
I think that's global rewards. I think that's probably what he's referring to, global rewards.
Okay.
And those are the discounts that are available. I don't know for sure if any of those go directly to the Rotary Foundation. I think they're more for the end user to get discounts.
Some of them say that they give money back to the Rotary, and I believe Amazon. I use Amazon Smile, but that's half of 1% of your purchases. So I've been using it for a couple of years. I've been using it for a couple of years, and I've got about $50, and I use a lot of Amazon. So, but I think it's 5% if you go to the right Amazon website with the Rotary Global Rewards.
Through Global Rewards, I've heard that, Paul, that you can use the Global Rewards through Amazon. Yep. Good point. Thank you for sharing.
And I think it's 5%, so that'd be 10 times as much.
That's good. Good to know. You get that, Cheryl? Okay. Alrighty. Any other questions before we move on?
We're good.
Good.
Jeanette, can you repeat that again about the Amazon? I was on mute.
Cheryl, go on Global Rewards, and Paul said you can get extra money to the Rotary Foundation if you use that link through Global Rewards and not Amazon Smiles.
Oh, Amazon Smiles. That's not much money at all.
Yeah.
0.5%. What's that? Like he said, $50 of, the amount of volume that he uses. Wow, that's not much at all. But that's good info. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Alrighty. The next slide we're going to talk about is restricted giving. The most common use of our restricted gifts, I think, is probably polio that we contribute to the most. That does not come back to the district as district designated funds like the annual fund does. The reason for it is because 100% of it has to go to where we tell it to go, right? It's a restricted fund by nature. So 100% of your donation to polio goes to the eradication of polio. If you choose to contribute to a grant, or maybe if you have a passion for water and sanitation and the money you send to the foundation, you're earmarking for a water and sanitation project. that does not come back to the district as DDF. It's not part of the annual fund. However, it does still count for Paul Harris credit, but does not count for per capita credit for the club. Okay? Questions on this slide?
Yep, we have a couple here.
I have
Okay.
to move on a little bit quick, so.
Yep. The point going through global. Okay, I'm sorry. It's back to the other stuff. Go ahead.
Okay, we're going. Moving along, the endowment fund. The endowment fund ensures long-term viability of the Rotary Foundation and its programs. They used only the interest portion to help support the projects of the World Fund. So our global grants, our scholars, and our vocational training teams. So we do not touch the principle of that. When we, for those of you who may be bequest society or benefactors, when you're going to that Rotary Club in the sky and you leave a part of your estate to the Rotary Foundation, it's going into the endowment fund. Okay, and they're going to live off of the interest. Questions? Oops, questions on that before we move on.
Jeanette, one question from Al Formella. The ability for local clubs to do fundraising may be impacted. Will there be any allowances for DDF allotments? Al, do you want to clarify exactly what you're saying there?
I think
I'm trying to find my mic.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously some of the clubs are going to be impacted with their ability to do fundraising. And I know a lot of times the district grants go along with matching funds from the local clubs. And, you know, I know our club is being affected by some of this. And I'm just wondering how we're looking at that from a district perspective.
Okay, I'm going to put that in the parking lot because I need to kind of stay on topic because I have to finish within a few more minutes. If there's time at the district grant session, maybe you could ask that question. Okay, or you and I can talk off of the session. Okay. Alrighty. So who is this Paul Harris guy and what does it mean to be a Paul Harris Fellow? I think that's hopefully an easy one for all of you. I see a lot of familiar faces out there. Interestingly, it's $1,000 or a combination of $1,000 and points to become a Paul Harris Fellow. When this award was first instituted back in 1957, guess how much it was to become a Paul Harris Fellow? $1,000. So it has not gone up in price like the rest of inflation. I'm pretty sure you could have bought a lot more for your money then than you can now. So let's go on a little bit more to some of our contribution levels, and we're doing pretty good on time. So let's talk about some of these. A sustaining member. A sustaining member is someone who contributes a minimum of $100 to the Rotary Foundation's annual fund on an annual basis. And I'll take questions at the end. Paul Harris Fellow, we said, is $1,000. And once you reach that first threshold, you can go on to become additional multiple Paul Harris Fellows. We'll give you some sapphires. We'll give you some rubies. Paul Harris Society, you see to the contribution recognition to the right there, there's a chevron, PHS. Those are for folks who have made a commitment to give $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation on an annual basis. Doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life. We understand it. Sometimes tough things get hard and you can't, but is your intent to make $1,000 contribution to the Rotary Foundation on an annual basis. Major donor. Major donor is folks who have contributed $10,000 or more to the Rotary Foundation, and that is hard, cold cash. Your points do not count. Interestingly, if you have a spouse who is also a Rotarian, like I do, they combine your points together to reach your major donor status. So combined, your cash contributions have to equal 10,000 or more to receive your first major donor. Second one comes after 25,000, and they go up from there. Arch Plump Society, $250,000 to the Rotary Foundation. And we do have several Arch Plump Society members in our district. And those can be in the form of investments and real estate and things like that. It doesn't all have to be cash. Benefactor is someone who contributes $1,000 to the endowment fund and or leaves a minimum of $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation in their estate planning or life insurance. Bequest Society is a $10,000 or more commitment when you go to that Rotary Club in the sky. The Rotary Foundation Endowment Fund will get a piece of your life insurance or your estate planning, however you want to work that out. Every Rotarian Every Year Club is a club who has a minimum of $100 per capita to the annual fund. That means at least every member, you know, if you total all your members and divide all of their contributions by the number of members, that's your per capita, with a $25 minimum per paying member to the annual fund, okay? $100 average per or more per capita, minimum of 25 to the annual fund. 100% Sustaining Club is 100% of your members are giving at least $100 to the annual fund every year. And sometimes we get tripped up on this because sometimes some of our Rotarians are very passionate about polio. So they may decide to contribute to the polio instead. So just keep an eye on that. 100% Paul Harris Fellow Club. One given time, in one given day and time, 100% of your members are Paul Harris Fellows, 100% of them. 100% Paul Harris Society Club. 100% of your members are members of the Paul Harris Society and have made the commitment to give $1,000 per year to the Rotary Foundation. And this next one is a district initiative, and it's a Paul Harris Society Club. Many of your clubs feel passionate about the Rotary Foundation. We give to all of these other great organizations in our community. Let's not forget our own Rotary Foundation. So out of their fundraising efforts, they have committed to give $1,000 out of the club's budget to the Rotary Foundation every year. Top 3 per capita clubs is the top 3, just what it says, per capita clubs in the district, okay? They also get a seat on the share committee, and they help to decide where our district grant money goes. Questions on this slide?
No questions right now.
Awesome, because we only have, how can you learn more? I'm so glad you asked. If you have a foundation guru in your club, if you don't know of one, there's many of us on this call. I've seen you all. Invite somebody from the district foundation team to be a guest speaker in your club. Attend the district grant management seminar coming up next. If you can't attend that one, there's another tomorrow. And please make sure, especially if you've been approved for a grant this year, you attend the grant management seminar 2 at 3 Keys to Success. If you have been awarded a grant this year, you have to have at least 3 members of your club attend that one. It's a requirement. And that's all I got. Hold on. And there's my information. If you all need it, please reach out to me.
Jeanette, I've been trying to take a list of who wanted a copy of this PowerPoint. Do you want me just to do that, to have them reach out to me and I'll get it and forward it to them?
Yep.
That work?
Well, my contact information is there. Just have them email me.
Yeah, perfect.
I'll send
Much
you
easier.
over.
Thank you.
Can I clear just a couple things up since we've got the few minutes? I think we're giving everybody a break at 2:50, correct? And then we start the next one at 3?
Yes.
Al, if I'm interpreting your question correctly, the grants, district grants will still be a maximum match of 50%. So if you want to do a $2,000 project, you can get a $1,000 grant against that, up to a $1,000 grant against that project. Is that what your question was?
Yes and no. I mean, I think in that some of the clubs are going to be challenged to do their normal fundraising activities to support some of their projects that they've requested district funding on, matching grants on. And I'm just wondering overall from our district if anybody else is concerned about that. I know of 2 clubs in our areas that's being impacted now on their ability to do fundraising because we're kind of got grounded in the middle of our biggest fundraising season. So that's obviously that's going to impact some of our ability to carry on some things we'd like to address later on in the year.
Understood. And there was something else, Jeanette. Oh, COVID grants. So the first thing you need to do on the COVID grants is please reach out to your club president. I sent them a detailed list of everything that was involved with a COVID grant. It is done via the district grant, same process. And so if you sit through Jonathan and Tim's session, which is up next, which is a requirement in order to submit a district grant, then you'll get an idea of how to submit a COVID grant. The difference in the COVID grants is that you'll be able to execute them prior to our normal July, August timeframe if they are approved. That's the difference in the COVID grants. There is also the possibility of doing what I would term a reverse global grant for COVID response into our district, which means it would have to be a $30,000 project, and we would have to find a partner district from someplace else in the world. The normal requirement is that those partner districts submit at least a minimum of 30% of the funding to a global grant in the United States, and that has been waived in this crisis. So if you have a global grant that you think there may be a need for, global grants require sustainability. So we can't say we want to supply this lunch line with that many meals. That probably will not fly. But there are some things that may. So if you have questions on that, please reach out and we'll cover them. And that was the two things. Sorry, Jeanette.
That's fine. Absolutely. You guys, you have a little bit of a break between now and your 3 o'clock session. Are there any other questions that we can answer that you didn't ask already?
I've pulled 3 random numbers. Somebody's going to be a winner.
Me.
Me.